What is happening, YouTube? It's Mr. Chill Out here in partnership with GamesYouLove.com, bringing you a new series where I'll be looking at the original games in a given game series to better understand why they are the series they are today and where they come from in the first place. In this episode, I'm going to be focusing on Capcom's genre-defining horror survival classic, Resident Evil. So without further ado, let's get into this. The year was 1996. Technology was evolving at a rapid pace. Google was nothing but an indexing baby without even a domain name at the time. Mobile phones were becoming smaller with Motorola, Nokia and Ericsson fighting for the control of the market. Take That was splitting up, the Spice Girls were blowing up, Tupac got shot up and the Fresh Prince moved from Bel Air to Washington to fight aliens. Diana and Charles couldn't pull through the hard times, whilst the Looney Tunes seeked out Michael Jordan to help them get through their hard times. It was a crazy year full of game changers, and this did not stop within the gaming industry. With massive releases like Pokemon Red and Blue, Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider and Super Mario 64, there was plenty of hot competition to overcome. And then from the shadows, on the 22nd of March 1996 saw the release of Capcom's rendition of the zombie apocalypse on the PlayStation.
Resident Evil.
Or better known as Biohazard in the East. The Western offices decided to change the name due to difficulties in trademarking the name Biohazard. The game had been in development for 3 years by a dedicated team, ultimately run by the producer Shinji Mikami, who in the first 6 months of the project worked alone. The initial design and inspiration of the game was based around a 3D version of Mikami's mentor's 1989 horror game by the name of Sweet Home, also released through Capcom. Mikami wanted to bring Sweet Home's psychological horror to the next generation, however, changed his mind on a later date and decided to go with a zombie apocalypse as the main focus. Resident Evil has been classed by many critics over the years as being one of the most important games of all time and also so influential in the horror genre. It was the first game to actually classify survival horror as a genre, and it paved the way for other massive survival horror games like Silent Hill to break into the market. Up until February of 1997, Resident Evil was the best-selling PlayStation game. As of this recording, Resident Evil has sold more than 5 million copies worldwide, which isn't the highest of all the games in the series, but coming from a time when video games were still young, it's impressive. The game controls were one of the things that added to the effects of the terror and horror by not allowing the most fluid of movement, with the left and right arrows controlling your spin and up and down controlling your walking forward and backwards. It made it very hard to navigate the tight corridors, meaning a lot of frantic moments of fear when faced with several zombies. The shooting was also nowhere near as accurate as we are used to with first-person shooters now, so being able to drop a zombie with a gun wasn't the easiest of feats, and it also took quite a lot of ammo to kill a zombie, so you had to pick your gunfights very carefully. It also made it really hard that when you was in combat mode you couldn't move, so you was just a static target, and this was really evident when you used your knife because it was up close and personal with the zombies, but you couldn't move around, so when you stabbed them, chances are you got bit, and it made it so hard to actually utilise the knife well. Now, in a game where health was really important and 3 bites from a zombie could kill you, health wasn't exactly readily available all the time. You either had these cans that were one use or your herbs that you could mix up, but it wasn't something you found in every single room. So roaming around the mansion, you had to watch what attacked you and how much health you actually had, and that's why I hated the knife. The fixed camera system, borrowed from Alone in the Dark, also added to the immersion, and dodgy angles made it very hard to see what was hidden down corridors and see what you was up against, allowing the player to only hear a zombie in close proximity but never knowing exactly how many there were or where they're going to come from or how close they were to you. Now you couple the dodgy camera angles with a very silent game where the music was set very low in the background and the only sounds that you actually heard was your footsteps or clocks or the moans of something undead. Ambient sounds were the things that sat very high in the sound mix. It gave a truly scary feel with tension to a game that was carving a whole new genre. The story was set almost at the very beginning of the zombie outbreak in a mansion on the outskirts of Raccoon City. Without any spoilers, it was basically a biological company's experiment gone wrong. Ultimately, you were sent in to retrieve other members of your team that had gone missing without no contact. You get the choice of playing between Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield. Each player has strengths and weaknesses. Once you've made your choice, you then had to go through the horrors of the mansion's dead occupants, along with infected zombie dogs, crows, wasps, snakes, and a very nasty surprise at the end. And all of this you had to do while solving problems and collecting pieces of the puzzle, all with very little help and no waypoints to give you hints of where you needed to go or what you needed to pick up. And back then, a little thing called YouTube did not exist, so tips and walkthroughs were very hard to come by. You normally had to buy some sort of a magazine with a walkthrough in it, and they weren't the easiest to follow. Without walkthrough, things were made harder with a limited inventory, so you could only pick up a maximum of 6 items. Some items that you had were things that you used, like your bullets or your herbs and things like that. Other items that you picked up were things that helped you progress further, so it might be a piece to a puzzle, it might be a gem to open a door, or something you needed later on. Without no guides, you never knew what was handy at the time and what was handy for later on. So sometimes you had to risk it, and then you could only put these objects down in a container. You couldn't actually just drop them and come back to them. So this made it harder to progress further in the storyline. Sometimes you could walk around for hours and still get nowhere. Resident Evil redefined zombies in a culture where George A. Romero reigned supreme, and before The Walking Dead was even a thing. This game opened up doors for Capcom to be the leading horror developer, and there was proof in the pudding when they released the second installment of Resident Evil to huge success. This was the beginning of a series that has now spanned 7 main games and countless spin-offs and tens of millions of sales worldwide over 20 years. I guess you could call that a successful beginning to a series. So that's all we have time for this instalment of Where It All Began. I'm going to ask you a lot what game I should do next, so leave a comment below to let me know what you want to see. Now if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a massive thumb in. If you feel like I've missed out on some of the nostalgic goodies, then get the discussion going below in the comment section. And to keep up to date with everything retro, don't forget to subscribe to the Games You Love channel and go and check out www.gamesyoulove.com for all your retro needs. I have been your host, Mr. Chill Out. It has been a massive pleasure. There's a link to my personal channel in the description below, so head over there to see my other gaming related content. I would be forever grateful, and until next time, laters.